We are lighting the candle a world that works. Every week we say this. And for some reason or another, it all just seems to turn out that way. I'm here and I'm Bill Correll. I'm with my online bestie, Dan Jeremias, and we are going to spend some time today kind of delving into a specific topic. I think it's something that's near and dear to your heart, Jan, mine as well as probably every human being that's alive. But along those lines, what are we going to talk about today, my friend?
Gosh, I have so much that I'm sitting with Bill, and I've been really delving into this whole landscape of emotions, getting some new perspective and some new thoughts and ideas on, on emotions and what they are, and the acceptance of what they are at any given moment.
Sure.
And I think the thing in the past few days that has become quite obvious to me in everything that I've been reading and thinking about is our tendency as human beings to label certain emotions as good or bad. And that, the beautiful work of Dr. Susan David, where she basically tells you that emotions are signposts, they're signals. Or you could say they're data, because I love data. So they're data about how you're doing and what you need in any given moment and who you are and what you want and what feels comfortable and uncomfortable. And can we shift our focus from looking at them as like something that we want to deny or push away because we're busy and we don't have time, or we sugarcoat them because we have this thread in our society where everything's supposed to be positive and we're supposed to appear as being positive people? And can we come to a place where we actually sit with them for a while, even if they're uncomfortable?
Mm.
And so that's what I've been a lot is in there.
The sitting with something that's uncomfortable, what's that like?
Not easy, not easy at all at times. Um, I find that, takes a lot of courage at points, to sit with an uncomfortable or really challenging emotion, whether that be anger or sadness or, jealousy or something else that happens to be present this morning. And you can go through and try to decipher or kind of delve deeper into what that is. But I don't think it's easy. I think it takes practice. I think it takes commitment. I've learned that, you can't really push it away. It always ends up showing up somewhere. And it's so energetically draining to constantly push something out
Hmm.
and to create a wall around something and say, okay, I'm not going there, I'm not going there. And that's really exhausting.
I wonder what you're talking about. There's such a tension between the emotional feeling and the abstractness of it and trying to translate it into some sort of communicable or understandable language. And when you're speaking, what I'm thinking about is that sometimes when there is a feeling, there is a need to label it. There's a need to have it be a good or a bad, as you were saying. There's a need to make it knowable when it may be in the dimension of unknowable. And when you think about um, the time that we spend trying to get out of a situation where the feeling is uncomfortable, especially when we're alone, and that tension, and there's a real kind of a fight going on. I think what you're alluding to is always kind of in the soup of this shouldn't be, or there's something wrong here, or along those lines. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is, like I said, the signpost that, that, let's say we use the example that somebody's feeling lonely,
Yep.
which I think is a very common feeling. And so, what's the opposite? Is people long for connection. And so, there is something wrong. The person feels disconnected, or if somebody's feeling angry,
Yep.
the opposite, or could be the opposite, is something unjust has happened and they're seeking justice or balance. So yes, I think it is this framework of starting to delve, and if you can't pinpoint it, is like almost taking two other words or two other emotions that might, because people tend to kind of soup them all together. Like they're not quite sure what they're feeling. They just
Right.
know they're feeling uncomfortable or feeling distraught, but they're not really sure what that is. And to start to, one is be aware of it. So that's the first step, is that awareness, to start to notice, oh, this is how I feel. Um, and then it's to, one is, I think you have to surround it with a little bit of compassion. Like you have to realize that having emotions is part of being, is part of the contract we have of being a human being, is having emotions. And if we have no emotions, we're basically dead. I mean, so it's just not possible. So, so you have to kind of come to this feeling of compassion. And then I think the courage, or the curiosity is another word, is to get curious about it, to, start to ask yourself these questions of like, oh, what is this about? What happened? Why do I feel this way? All these things. And sometimes it's very hard to articulate. And then, but I think the more, like I say, we get still or we get quiet, the more opportunity, it is more we give a space around it. And there is some linguistic things we can do as far as how we frame that emotion and how we talk about it with others if we decide to share it, to see if we can create a little space around it so it's not all encompassing. It's not all we are.
It's an interesting concept. So if you think about thoughts, they're nothing. There's nothing there, nothing to change, nothing to alter. And yet, you and I spend our lives doing mostly that. You know, there are times where if you're in the middle of something and you're really having a great enjoyment, blissful joy, whatever, you're not thinking about how you're feeling. You're just feeling it. You're living. And yet we have these timeout periods where there's something we have to do before we can live. And if you think about, and really that's all we can do is think about, if we ponder and we conjure and we think about other than we are, as opposed to maybe just sitting in it for a little while.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's why I said I think that visiting it, and literally that's a really great way, and sitting in quiet or stillness, where when you don't want to deal with a challenging emotion, I have to say, is not a comfortable space to be in. I mean, the last thing you want to do is sit there and be with it, especially when there's something on your mind or something has happened. But what worthwhile time spent and actually sitting with it at points and allowing yourself to feel it. And that's where I go, like, to a lot of body awareness. Where do I feel it? What color does it have? Does it feel congested or tight or dense, or does it feel airy or light? And start to process it in that way. But also to start to look, I think once you start to do that, you can start to see patterns. It's like if there's something that's coming up all the time, it's always like those repeated circumstances, which kind of let's say, which is the thing that you need to work on, which all of a sudden shows up in, like, every scenario that happens to you after a period of time. It's like, okay, that's happening again. And you're like, again? And here it is. Some circumstances comes up where, which makes you excessively, you get this feeling of being, it's unjust, or you feel a certain way. And then the same thing happens and you have the same feeling, and the same thing happens and you have the same feeling. And finally, maybe you get curious and you say to yourself, this happens all the time. Maybe I should look at this. Maybe I should delve a little deeper and say, what's this really about? But unless you start to, if you ignore, there's never any opportunity to change that. You know, it, there's never anything that's gonna to change it. And also to, like I said, I mean, I think that if you truly push it away all the time, all it does is, from what I've read, the links to depression and anxiety when you do that are quite high.
right?
So not dealing with it is really, unless you want to be depressed and highly anxious, is not really a solution at all.
Well, let's stay with this for a minute because it's a problem. It's being described as a problem. It exists as a problem in language. What if it isn't? In psychology, there's this thing called an earlier similar. And what that is a set of experiences that all seem to like that pattern that you were talking about before. And what it really all comes down to is to make a decision whether you're tuned to the right frequency. What if you're listening for that to happen all the time and then therefore you find it? You and I are great creators, and you know what? You can take on that the world is happening to you, but there is enough evidence out there to demonstrate no, you're creating the world that you're experiencing. So who are you in the matter of who that is? While you're in this series of conversations about different ways to handle it, way before there's a choice to handle it, maybe there's a choice to take a minute to understand what it is. Not what it is in terms of what you think it is right now, but how long can you sit quietly, as you were saying, sit quietly inside of it until something talks to you, until something comes back and gives you some information that's not your thought processes up here trying to fill the silence and this and all that, and yeah, this is it, so the next step would be, if you're kind of like dealing with the same situation over and over and over again, what would it be like to not have that present? What would it be like for it to disappear and some new situation kind of present itself more frequently?
Well, I guess my question is that, first of all, when you're in it, it's and that's your pattern of thinking, it's very hard to get beyond that. It's very hard to get out of that pattern. Um, and I guess my other comment would be, I think it depends on how much it's affecting your life. Like,
Let's say, all right,
I think it depends on how much it's affecting. Like you said, it's a problem. Well, I mean, I guess if, I don't really think people know. I think people kind of glide through life putting on this facade and mask that everything is fine and everything's okay.
maybe
And when they're not,
I'm
you
arguing
know,
something completely different, Jan. You're arguing for it's real and it's there. I'm arguing for what if it's not? What if it's not real? What if it's not there? What if it's
well,
a
whether it's what?
what if it's a habit? That's all I'm saying.
I
Do me
mean,
a favor for 1 second, okay?
right, I'm listening.
Put your debating hat on for a second and now argue for what I'm saying.
I
Just
don't
for
want
gra-
I mean, I, I, affirm it's hard for me to do that because I feel that, if you're coming from a space where, yeah, I'm trying to grasp. I mean, yes, can you get maybe to a place of at points where you feel like, oh, okay, this is a habit and I'm going to change this habit?
There you go. There's the if and then. Okay, just do the if part. I'm asking you to ponder and see if you can get behind, like, finding, an explanation for making it correct only for this conversation. However it really is, I don't think either one of us has a handle on that for all the millions of people that are going to be listening to this podcast. But I'm saying, what if there really is nothing there? And I offer you this to consider. Do you realize you've forgotten all those things that didn't have an impact on you that you felt like you needed to remember because there was something there?
That was a little bit too fast for me, but my brain isn't moving that fast. But
You can't remember something that you haven't identified as trauma. Okay. You can't remember something that you haven't identified as joy. You can't possibly remember the millions of things that you've done every second of your life for the last 10 years. All you remember are those things that keep linking you back to your identity and who you are and how you're wired and what's the reason for this. And I can't stand having this, whatever. I'm not saying this is what you're saying. I'm saying that when people are in that space and they're constantly, it's like one of those Chinese, finger cuffs where the harder you pull on it. So you were kind of like talking about sitting with it, but you were sitting in an order to and sit with it, so that sit with it. And
I think that s- to me, going through those things, sitting is the opportunity to get quiet and just, and to hopefully not be distracted so that I'm not saying that you are aware of it. And I like the word aware, whatever it is, you're aware of it. Am I saying that you have to go through that analytical path of what it is? When I sit, I don't sit and necessarily analyze what it is. I sit with it and then I say, okay, this is there. And maybe I ask myself those questions. And maybe I just sit in kind of space and see what comes in.
yeah,
That's more revealed to me about it as opposed to me having to label it or having to decipher it. I can sit with it, and I think that it's all of the above. I don't think it's all one or the other. I think there are times I sit with it where I am in that kind of like, okay, what is this about for me? Why is this happening? What pattern is this? What could I do? And then there are points where I don't do anything. I just sit with it and say, one, let me feel it. Let it just, in a way, wash over me and be with it, not push it away, not analyze it, not do anything with it, but look at it basically as energy, because that's really what it is. It's an energy. And so what does that energy feel like for me? And then there are points where I just sit there and probably do both, where I in this quest for um finding or seeking more balance probably. Um trying to not necessarily, like I said, label it good or bad, which is how we've been trained, you know. But basically, society's been trained, not we've been trained, but society perceives as labeling things as good or bad, or being angry as bad and being loving and kind is good, kind of thing.
yep.
But I think if you look at, like I said to the beginning, if you look at emotions as signposts of you navigating the world, then it just has it's an opportunity for information about yourself.
I'm really letting that in, the data part and the signposts, translating an emotion into language that is useful. And I'm right now in this conversation, I'm a little bit stuck because it seems like the conversation isn't academic. It's more personal, okay, which is really good. Um, that being the case, have a lot to potentially gain, in having a different take at what it is. Do you follow me? What's at stake for you is to have um, a future that is open with possibility, that doesn't require steps to go through in order to justify or resolve or have this way of coping. And this part I'm talking about isn't for you, Jan, it's for everyone who feels this way, simply because this is a human condition, this is something we all share. And every moment that you're spending trying to resolve what it is, how it is, why it is, where it is, what color it is, how big is it, how much does it weigh, those are moments in your life that you'll never get back. Those are moments that you could be experiencing joy, not talking about how you experienced joy. They're two different things. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree, except that I look at it and I think to myself, one is I don't think I think it's there under the surface for people. I think it lives within people and they have to cultivate and and almost I would say nurture because I don't want to say the word learn. It just seems too academic. So nurture a way of how to experience it, not deny it, because I look at people and the level of anxiety, depression, fear that is in right now a pandemic in our society, global society, and I believe that this tendency to compartmentalize ourselves and to think that we are purely human doings and not human beings is now is revealing itself at great cost. As I talk to people who are hopeless, who are depressed, anxious, um and I sit there and I think to myself, well, this tendency of our society to sit there and say, well, ignore that and get to work, or ignore that and take care of these people, or ignore that and is not working.
I want you to understand, I'm offering you another possibility. The word ignore is not anywhere in my language with you in this last half hour. I am saying to you that the system that we have been trained in is that whenever you decide something is wrong, there's a fix for it. There is a action that you can take. There's a protocol. There's a scientific method for removing what is wrong. And I'm posing this question. What if there's nothing wrong?
Well, I'm not saying that. So even if you don't use the word wrong, if you, well, then I guess would you say the number of anxious and depressed and hopeless people is not a problem?
Not at
And
all.
and there's and that's right.
I'm actually offering you something quite different. I'm offering you an opportunity to replace anxiety with something new, something that most human beings have not experienced. And once they do, it's it's an opportunity for them in any moment to replace a feeling because they know they don't have to identify it. It's kind of the same thing as if you ever lived on a farm, you know how you don't name an animal you're going to eat? right? Because if once you've named the animal, you can't eat it, okay? That animal's going to be with you until it passes away. What if it's like that's an analogy, or the metaphor would be, it we're trained, you have to know what it is so you can make sure it never ever ever happens again, okay? I'm saying quite
Just,
clearly,
and I'm not saying that. And
no,
it's
you're
not
not.
to me that it's that you're not saying it will never happen. I'm saying that to let go of it, I think you have to sit with it. I
I'm
think,
We're
and
getting close here, okay? Can I talk for a
because I
minute?
think, because I feel like, I mean, I look at my own life experience
Fair
and I
enough.
sit there and I say to myself, I was willing to let go of certain things and maybe not everything that I need to let go of because I think that's a lifelong journey, in my opinion. Um, but I've let go of certain things in my life because I had the grit, the courage, the compassion, the love for myself to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to sit there and be with this. And maybe that's, maybe, and I don't think I'm special because I know people who've done the same, who've sat there and said that, okay, well, this is really, this is not, I'm not happy. And so, and I'm, in that way I'm labeling and but I'm labeling myself. So I'm not happy. And so this has to be, I have to figure out a way. And I'm not saying figure out in that I have to analyze and do, but I have to figure out, like, come up for myself. And that was the way I worked. I have to figure out a way to move through this. And some of that meant that I had to sit with it and whatever, if I had to do it, because I wasn't letting it go. It wasn't like I could turn off a switch and say, okay, I'll get joyful and now it's all fine. I didn't have, and most of the people I know don't have the capability of doing that because, like I said, we're not compartmentalized. We're beings and we have everything in us all at the same time. And that means the good, the bad, the ugly, the trauma, the joy, it's all there. And then you have to figure out, yes, is it a balance where I say, okay, well, can I shift a little bit out of this place? And at points you need to, because otherwise there's no reason to get up, like in the morning. And at points you lose and you stay in bed, because you're like, I'm too much there today. I can't get out. And then maybe you phone a friend or you do something different because you want to move out of it, but whatever ways you're doing. But I think it is all an experimental process. But I think that it's not like, what you're describing to me seems too compartmentalized. And I don't think that's a human experience.
Well, I think you've so decided, okay? And this is what we do. Once you've decided there is something there, you will argue to the death for it, okay? What if? Do you know how people transform and they get beyond what there is for them to get beyond? Like there's really something there, is they finally get the joke. The joke is there's nothing there. There isn't anything there. It wasn't bothering you 5 minutes ago when it wasn't bothering you, but it's bothering you now, by golly. Okay. So I'm saying to you, it's not that hard. You just have to give up, not you. I mean, this is a generic, we have to give up the need to be right, that there is something there. Now, let me speak, please.
No, I wasn't getting ready. I wasn't saying I wasn't going to say anything. I was letting you go.
Exactly. So the point is this: I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's not true. All I'm saying is if you've decided you're going to suffer, then damn it, you're going to suffer. And you forget you made that decision. That's what we do. We have a traumatic experience and we feel a certain way. And then every time we experience that feeling, it triggers that memory in our body. However, each time that it happens to you, you could ask yourself, is there anything there? It's like
Right.
being afraid of the dark. There's
No,
nothing
no, I mean,
there. But once you've decided there is, you can't go to sleep.
right. No, I mean, in that way, I mean, I do agree with you because I think that that was what I was talking about to begin with when I said you start to question. And that's when you start to get curious and you say to yourself, is this real? Is this a inkling of what happened earlier that triggered me? And all of a sudden, I'm down that same path already and going down that same whatever path because that reminded me of something that happened 50 years ago.
So
And
hang on. The first question you ask a bad question. Okay, the question is this real? It gives it mass. Like, yo, there's something there. There's nothing there. What if you say the
well,
following?
okay, I'll let you ask the question and then I'll ask.
I appreciate that. I love you. What if you say emotions just are? Rocks are rocks, trees are trees, emotions are emotions, and this is one. Let's move on with our life now. Do you see that would take a little bit of training? First of all, you got to remember it. The belief that there is something going on when there is nothing there is absolutely no different than being afraid of the dark and whatever monster is going to get you. There's nothing there. However, your mind will keep working on it until you say, trees are trees, rocks are rocks, emotions are emotions, and this is one. When you feel like there is something that needs to be discerned or or divined out of what you're feeling, it could be gas. I mean, for God's sake, give yourself a break. Not everything is a psychological do or die. And there are billions of dollars being spent annually so that people can say words to people who get paid $150 to $350 an hour. And in that process, what they're doing is they're making a friend. They're making a friend that they can speak all of this stuff out. I have a friend, and I'm really not going to talk down about you know any type of that sort of thing. But I have a friend who says he's been seeing the same psychologist, analyst, I guess he calls her, uh, for 17 years. He sees her once a week. It costs $175 for 1 hour. And I say, well, are you winning? And he says, Bill, what is that? I'm alive. I'm still here. In his mind, he budgets $175 a week so that he can remember one time in a week that he has a life worth living. What's he doing the whole rest of the week? Where's his mind? When he's not sitting with this woman trying to impress her with the next brilliant thing that he can say, because that's really what's at stake, is for him to wow her and wow himself in whatever he comes out with during that 1 hour of analysis. So what I'm saying to you is what if you and I only need to be trained that our idea is nothing more than something that takes up space? A thought is a thought. And Albert Einstein said two things cannot occupy the same time and space. That includes a thought. So if you have a thought and you think it's real because you thought it, now you've given it mass. However, if it's just an emotion, maybe there's something to notice, but nothing to do. What if it's as simple as trees are trees, rocks are rocks, emotions are emotions, and that is one? It's gone now. like your dream that you had last night. So important, so real while it was going on. Most people can't remember their dreams, but we're told that everyone dreams every single night. And then there are the people who say, except for me, I don't do that. So the whole thing becomes this conversational soup of what do you do when? And you have to take on, we've had these conversations many times, and I'm going to take a breath in a minute. We have had these conversations about accountability, responsibility in the matter of your own life. The quality of your life, you are your own QA department. You either decide that your life is as you wish it and continue doing that, or you audit and you do something else. And the something else that you do starts with your level of thinking. Does that make any sense?
I so in some ways it sounds good, but I guess my one comment right now would be we are feeling human beings. We are feeling. And yes, we have emotions. And so you had said the last line about thinking. And I think that's great, except if you go with the premise that we are feeling human beings, I'm not, it almost feels to me like an existence of, I always said that, so I'll use this example. I always said that yoga was this opportunity for me. And part of it was that I was forced, forced, and I say forced because it was scheduled time that I was with myself, where basically there were no distractions. So it was scheduled time in my day where I would sit and I would practice, and that was physical, but everything would come in from all my thoughts to all my emotions. Everything was there, whether I wanted them there or not, they were there. And it was scheduled time in my day multiple times a week where I could sit there and say, okay, well, this is there again, and this is not there again, and whether I touched or whatever. But just I sat there and I was like, and at times that was challenging because whatever was there, I didn't want it to be there. So it was like, I really don't want to visit this. I'd really rather go out and binge watch Netflix because this is too painful. I don't really want to look at this. But the and after doing that for a period of time, what ends up happening is I think the times that are very intense in your life, the sad times, you've lost somebody, you're really sad, you're grief stricken. You've had you're worried about somebody, that's there. And then the joyful times, so the exact opposite, becomes so much more dynamic. It's like you feel so much, and not in a bad way, but you just feel so much. Where I think before I kind of skated through life. I never really lived. I kind of was neither here nor there. I never really had an experience. Like I wouldn't say that I really truly was present in whatever it was. I was, and I almost felt like I lived like a half life, like I wasn't really living because that's not life. Life is having all those experiences at the same time. The fact that someone can die and you get up and there's this beautiful, spectacular morning, and the sky's still blue and the sun's still shining, or you see kids playing and it brings a smile to your face, and you're carrying love and grief at the same time, or love and loss at the same time, all in there at once. And that's what I'm saying. Is I think that that's, is that whole experience of truly living.
I love what you're saying, and I think we're getting somewhere. It seems it seems that you have designed human beings as feeling people who that now means something. Okay. It means something powerful. It means something in terms of your life experience that you just articulated. However, you said something really, really, really important.
What
Being
pearls of wisdom did I share that I have no idea what I said?
two words, being present. When you're identifying and labeling something, you're no longer present. Being present to that emotion as it is, no need to change it, no need to get away from it. Just like curiosity. What is this? Why? Where? So you, thank you.
I wasn't I was I
Today,
just I
we,
stopped
we,
myself.
yeah, I love you so much. We have this way of making decisions that we forget about. Okay. And each one of these creates like the chain in the belief system that causes us to suffer. And then reasonably, like because we're intelligent feeling beings, and I'm using your words inappropriately, so give me that space for a moment or two, we get left with something where there's things to do. As a matter of fact, we get left with a list of things that we will not live long enough to do. And in the moment, we're sacrificing not joy, not all those other things. We're sacrificing being present, which is the authentic, I say, the authentic human condition. When you're not present, you are being inauthentic. You are being less than the possibility you were placed on this earth for, because your response to your thoughts is inauthentic in terms of what's really going on in the world. Like, for instance, the being afraid of the dark and the boogie monster. You're, if you can just like embrace the dark and say, now, oh, my eyes are adjusting. I can see forms. Oh, there's actually a little LED going on that, air cleaner over in the corner of the room. There's all these things to be present to. And what I'm saying to you is there's no process in the world that is more human than teaching yourself to transforming to being present.
Well, that's why I think, and I love that. And I think that's why in my first sort of, when you asked me what was going, I said a lot there. I said, what's, is to pause, like, is to get space, is to sit with it. And when I say sit with it means to get present. It means to, when I sit, it's not the same every day if I sit. And sometimes, and I haven't been sitting lately. I've been walking and getting quiet and mindful without my phone's on me, but not on, just taking in my environment, being present to what's, the kids going to school and just being present to my environment. And that's how I get to other points. I sit and I get present. That differs for me. Right now, I can't sit. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get present another way. And is my tendency not to do that? Absolutely. My tendency is like, well, I have a lot to do. Let me make 5 calls, you know, but but I don't. And so it's to the ability to be aware, um, to give myself a little space to to be present. And I'm looking at you, Bill, like, ready to like sort of like me. Um, but to be, and not to do, but to be. And so that then offers me a little perspective and a little bit of, I heard this sort of image the other day, and I actually loved it. And it goes to your kind of labeling it, is if we could look at it as, first of all, linguistically speaking, as like I am, it's not that I am, it's really that right now I'm feeling this, but it's not all encompassing. It's not all I am. It just happens to be one thing that's going on or one feeling that I have within me at the moment. If you were to look at the sky and look at if you say, I am whatever, label it sad, happy, whatever, I'm one cloud in that sky. Like that is the sky, is that one cloud. Where if I can say the feeling where I kind of look at the sky and I think to myself, well, I'm so much more than that one feeling, that one cloud, that sad cloud is within me, but that's not all I am, then I become the sky.
Yeah.
And I love that image because I think that's what I look at being present as doing. It gives you that ability to look at the entire landscape of who you are as opposed to the one thing that you're feeling at that moment.
Yeah, I really feel like we're making progress here. And now all I need you to do is to consider, what if there's no list of things to do before you become present?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
What if there's just, I'm deciding to be present?
I'm deciding to be present. Absolutely.
No matter
Absolutely.
what's going on in my head, I am deciding to be present. And those thoughts can go sit in the corner. I know they'll come back and remind me, but for the moment, I am aware, I am awake, and I'm present.
And present. Yeah. I mean, the question is, can you, and this is the global can you, like,
Yeah.
can you sit there and decide that there's opportunities in every moment to be present?
That's a
That
decision that you make long before you get it to that moment. You have to decide ahead of time that there is benefit in being present, because mostly people have decided there's no benefit in being present, which is why we spend so much time with thoughts thinking about the past or the future, and only like 8 or 9% of actually just really noticing what's going on in front of us. I love what you're saying, because there's so much soup of training in terms of how this has to be processed on top of all this other stuff. But what if you just had this clear opportunity, and nobody can do this alone, Jan? It's brilliant what you said. This is one of those things that does require conversation with other people. And that conversation has to do with, I'm here, I'm present, now I'm not, because I just told you I was. And there's a not thatness about whatever it is, of any state that we want to be in, because our mind is not trained to shut off. You have to still your mind, and it's a different way than meditation. It's even a different way than focusing. It's more or less asking the question, is my thought process now serving me? Let's get present.
and I know you don't like the word label, but I remember years ago doing my teachers, we would meditate, and I remember doing the practice of pretty much not labeling what it was exactly, but just where it was coming from.
Yep.
Like, okay, past, past, future, future, past, past, just labeling. Okay, that happened. Past meaning it was something that came in that happened a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, or whatever.
Yep.
And future being something that hadn't happened yet that you were thinking about. And just to start to notice where your thoughts are going. And then to kind of sit there shift, it's kind of like, let's rein them in. And then, like, let's direct them here now because, like, let's pull those reins like you have a horse and you're kind of pulling those reins in to go back to your farm analogy and sit there and say, okay, what's happening in this moment? Okay, I'm breathing. Okay, I'm feeling my body, my seat, my butt on the ground or on the chair. I feel my feet on the ground,
Yep.
my clothing as it touches my skin, whatever I've had and whatever taste is in my mouth. I have that, and so, but it is a practice of noticing where you tend to go, where you tend to visit, let's just say that, when you're not present.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely love everything that you're saying. And I really appreciate how the training of your mind informally and formally kind of comes up with this whole mechanism. And then sometimes, you make the choice, not you in particular, but I love how you're speaking, and it really is it comes back to think about the last 50 years and the plight of human beings being told how human beings are. Like, men are this way, women are that way,
Oh,
teenagers are this way.
absolutely.
And it really kind of feeds the fight or flight, low level programming that Freud, I hope he's enjoying his time in hell, because he did a great job of setting us all up for a life of suffering, trying to figure out why. And I'm saying to you right now that no, this is something that would be similar to yoga in terms of doing a practice that allows you to more quickly each time get from a situation where you're disconnected from authenticity to where you are now being authentic in the moment. And now you're not. And then you are, and now you're not. And so there's a lot, when you're thinking about that, like, what's the value of that? Well, there isn't. There's some things in life that are just plain not useful, like smelling a dandelion, or listen to a bird sing, or these things do not make you money, okay? They're not useful in that way. However, if you think about the times that you've been fully engaged in your responsiveness to things, new stimulation and all that sort of thing, where you're authentically not worried about what you look like to the other people around you, you know what I mean? Especially dogs, right? When you're with dogs, you have this mentality where it's immediate and it's present, and you're just like, being. That's the best analogy that I can come up with that most people can understand. When you're having a face fight with a dog, and you're trying to decide who's going to lick who first, uh, that's it. That's the whole thing. You're not having thoughts about what you got to do, at Walmart today. You're just plain being in the moment.
Well, I think that first of all, I would question your use of useful. And because I think it's really useful, because we tend to come from a space that's less reactive when we start to practice being present.
Well, see,
And
here's the thing: the decision about things need to have a use or not.
right. No, 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 no. You were the one who used useful. I was
No,
just
I'm
correcting
telling you,
you.
there is no usefulness in living. Okay, you're just living.
Just living. Okay. Okay.
If
Thank you
you
for the
you
clarification
have
because you used the word useful. And I was like, I don't really
being
like
being
that word
present.
here.
Being present is not useful. Smiling at a dog is not useful. Being
Okay.
in love is not useful. It's a way of being.
Being. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I was just like wondering,
We
I'm like,
gotta find the usefulness, because otherwise, why do it, right?
why do it? Well, of course not. Yeah. I mean,
I'll go back to suffering now. Thank you.
they're useful. That's, but the other thing that and I also wanted to get back because I think there is I mean, you spoke about, and I think that one of the mistake, one of the, I guess I would say when you were talking about the divisions or the labeling or the kind of idea that we've given humanity, let's say that, teenagers are like this and women. And I think that when we talk about emotions, and I think it was always labeled as women are emotional and men have no emotions. Men are not emotional.
Whether they are or they aren't, that's how you be, right?
That's how you be. That's right. And I think that that has, and that's inherent. I think that girls and boys are raised differently because of that, in many households, you know. They're asked different questions. They're at, you know, that they were, and that some of it is that, like, our education system, which is kind of stuck with that kind of categorization of boys are like this and girls are like that. And, and then it's carried through in the workforce, and it's carried through in the fact that we've now we've now separated out, so it's no more like a group of people, human beings. And we've think we need to let go of the categories. Each person is individual.
I completely love it. I'm going to give you
I'm sure you
another.
are.
The access to being present is to get to nothing,
Hmm.
and not to get to the word nothing, but to get to what has been languaged as a clearing in which there's nothing but the infinite field of possibility. I mean, you can read what Deepak has to say about this, or Wayne Dyer, or even Werner Erhard, or any of the other great people that were about making people enlightened. And what enlightenment means to all of them means to cast the burdens away with no need to keep track of them. It means it's the enlightenment is the opposite of heavyinment. It means like lighten up. So when you're at a place where there's something, all you can do is change it, make it bigger, more, better, whatever. You take a blank piece of paper and you put a dot on it, you now have to work around that dot in terms of creating. You either need to include it in the next thing you're going to do or ignore it, but it's there. So each time you find out that there's a but in your sentence before being present and being empty and meaningless and being open and clear occurs for you, that but is your ticket out of jail. That but tells you, oh, I believe I made a decision that's not working for me and I forgot I did. So if you have that option to go back and say, it's not working for me. You know how I know? I'm not liking these emotions. I love feeling things, but not this. Maybe that's what there is to sit with. Sit with this, you know? So all of this comes back to, I love how you started this whole thing. We're both deep in the grief conversation. And I know you're going to be speaking to a very fortunate and lucky room full of people this weekend. Just being with you is going to improve their life, I guarantee you. And in the meantime, if there's one gift that you and I can bring and give to other people, perhaps we can give them a few moments of lightening up. See what that starts. Maybe that will light a candle in a world that's working.
I'm not sure how you want me to respond to that.
However
Uh,
you do is perfectly
However,
fine.
I do. Yeah, I am really excited to be sitting with people. And if I were to leave people with, I guess, a word, I would say pause would be a good word. And yeah, to pause eh, for a moment. We all tend to get really busy and distracted. So find a moment to pause. And if you join us on Saturday, I'm doing a chocolate meditation. So you'll get chocolate. So when you talk about joy, to me, that there's no better joy, you know, have a
Chocolate is
good,
a joy trigger, isn't it?
yeah, have a good piece of chocolate.
Or a glimmer, I guess they call it, if it's a good thing.
That's right, a glimmer.
So I want to just take a moment here and I want to thank you for this opportunity to increase our relatedness, and again, the conversation that you and I have been having these are not the things that everybody on the street are talking to each other about. It's really low on the priority list for folks to bump into each other and inspire them. You know what I'm saying? And the only access to inspiration is to always and everywhere just be who you authentically are. There's nothing to do there. There's nothing to think about. There's just show up, bring your training, and bring your ability to listen to yourself, engage in the world and see what's working and what isn't working. And always be responsible for what isn't working and always give the credit to the other people in the world for everything that is working.
That is working. Love that, Bill.
Good. Love you.
Yeah. Have a good one, everybody.
All right. God bless. Stay safe and be nice to each other out there. We are lighting the candle, a world that works. That's my story, and I'm sticking with
it. You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode as well as the rest of the network at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.